Welcome back to another tutorial. Just going to be basically thinking out loud here, telling you all what it is that's going through my mind when it comes to starting to paint this still life. First things first, you got to know your complementary colors because we are plotting in shadows first. So red and green are complementary, yellow and purple, that's complement, and blue and orange is a complement. So you're constantly creating these muddy, dark earth tones. There are going to be slightly different types of shadows, warmer shadows, cooler shadows, depending on the object that the light is bouncing around, light that's being, or shadows being casted, things like that. So you really want to stare very, very hard at the reference. That's something I think a lot of people forget about. You want to be looking at your reference twice as much as the painting. It's very, very helpful to print out a reference as well. So if you have class with me and you don't have a printed out reference, let me know. Send one my way. I can get it printed for you. Anyway, the highlights. Highlights are the opposite of the complementary colors. For the highlights, things are looking vibrant. Okay, in my scene, I have some blue highlights in the glass bottle. I have some yellow highlights in the skull. I have some really bright, pinky highlights in the drapes. Bright purple in the donut. I also have some extremely bright orange in the orange. So I'm using a lot of white with just a tiny little bit of paint coming right out of the tube. But that's the only time that I'm using paint straight from the tube is in the highlights. Another thing I'm doing all over the place at this stage, I am thinning down my paint. So I want the paint to lay nice and flat because we're going to keep on building layers and layers and layers. You don't want your first layer to be super chunky and textured. So while the acrylic paint is still wet in the process of drying, I will rinse off my brush in the water cup, wipe it off in the paper towel a little bit. Now, this is what I call a nice blank neutral brush. It's a little bit damp, and what you can do is kind of push and pull around the paint while it's drying and thin it out. So here at the end, one last thing I want to talk about is potentially redesigning your still life. Just because you took a picture a few days ago doesn't mean you are committed to that picture and every single little thing in there. Personally, I did not like how the blue bottle was super dark, didn't have a lot going on, didn't look that interesting. So I replaced it with the clear bottle. I also didn't like how the drapes had a bunch of diagonal lines and horizontal lines. Drapes look so much better when they have these really long, straight up and down lines. So I redesigned and kind of moved around the drapes. So consider using 3 or 4 different images in order to piece together your still life. Just make sure you're communicating with other people in the room before you move something. Like, hey, did you guys take a picture of your still life before I mess with these drapes? As long as you're communicating with everyone around you, it should be fine because at this stage, we're all working from pictures. So, I've seen every single one of your still lifes at this point, and a lot of you guys are just going a little too complicated. Little too complicated. I would say less is more, dial it back. The most complicated object I have in my scene is the skull. And then I have a couple intermediate objects like the donut and bottle. Then I have 1 to 2 like really simple objects like the orange and the plate. So you want to think about it like that. A couple intermediate objects, maybe 1 complicated one, and then some simple ones in there as well. Just keep in mind, we're all learning. The idea here is a portfolio piece. And if you have a bunch of complicated objects in the scene, it's just never going to get done. You're just going to be spending a month or 2 months like painting still life when we should really move on to something we're a little more interested in. Anyway, that's all I can really think to talk about right now. So good luck. Peace out.